Hi everyone, I'm Brooke Kavanaugh, and today I'm going to be teaching you a little bit more about German culture. So please listen up, because at the end of this video, I'm going to have you fill out a short survey about how I did to gather information for my personal project report. Thank you! So a little overview of what's going to be in this video. First, I'm going to teach you all about a traditional German dance. Then, I'm going to explain why a negative stereotype of the German culture is wrong, using the traditional dance as an example. Finally, I'm going to explain why that stereotype is attached to the German culture. And thank you in advance for being quiet and paying attention. Let's start at the beginning. The very first instance of the waltz being danced dates back to 13th century Germany. The waltz started out as a peasant folk dance. As you can tell from this picture, this form of the waltz was more upbeat than the form we commonly see today. The modern form of the waltz is called the Viennese waltz. This adaptation dates back to 16th century Vienna, Austria. Unlike the original waltz, the Viennese waltz is not a folk dance, but a court dance. Folk dances were lively and celebratory, whereas court dances were formal, and as a result, the Viennese waltz is a more serious version than the original waltz. It took some time for the waltz to become popular, and different versions of the waltz were more popular than others. The waltz first gained popularity in the mid-18th century in France. At this time, the allemande form was the favorite of the French. But in the late 18th century, one of the trademarks of the waltz became popular, the 3/4 time. Queen Victoria took a liking to the waltz, despite judgment from other powerful social figures, which helped the waltz to become even more popular. The waltz was not popular in America until the 19th century, long after it became popular in Europe. As with anything else important, the waltz had serious pushback and was very controversial. The waltz was a very progressive dance at the time, so most of the pushback came from traditionalists. The main problem society had with the waltz was that the dancers stood far too close together. At the time, dancers stood a distance apart, especially if they were not married. But the waltz is danced chest to chest. The other problem traditionalists had with the waltz was that it is way too easy to learn and dance. Harder dances took longer to learn, and lower-class citizens didn't have enough time to learn them, so dancing became a way to show off one's social status. The waltz, however, was not like this, and can be learned in a matter of hours. The waltz was branded as sinful and vulgar by traditionalists, along with many other insults. Of course, the waltz was finally accepted and the pushback ended. This happened in Europe after the 18th century, once the time signature was changed to 3/4 time that is used today. And later, the waltz was accepted in America in the mid-19th to early 20th century. The waltz is still widely performed even today, though the dance has evolved over the centuries, and the waltz is by no means considered scandalous anymore. Now we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. Germans are harsh. Except, how does this stereotype actually compare to a large part of German culture? Not very well, it seems. Harshness is often jarring. It disrupts the flow of what is going on around it. The waltz, on the other hand, is graceful and gentle. When people waltz, they're flowing around the room. There's nothing harsh or jarring about it. Harshness is also often associated with being rude to someone who isn't following the rules, or in other words, someone who isn't following traditions. As you just learned, the waltz went against almost every tradition at the time. Those who favored the waltz were the opposite of harsh. They encouraged kindness and openness. Now, I need you to understand that when I say personal experience, I do not mean my personal experience with Germans. I mean the reasons why my friends, family, and I have believed in the Germans are harsh stereotype. So first is the language. Whenever I heard someone speak German, I felt like I was being yelled at because the phonetics or the pronunciation was forceful. And honestly, just not as pretty as Romance languages like French and Spanish. The second reason why I considered the Germans harsh was because of World Wars I and II. I don't feel like I really need to explain this one, so I'm just gonna move on. Last is because of movies and media. The movies and media play into the Germans are harsh stereotype, and as a result, people only see Germans represented that way, and they don't really have an example of what else to believe. When I did more research into why Germans are perceived as harsh, I found that it had to do with family values. Germans value the ease of the whole family, or even the whole community, over the ease of the individual. This manifests as being strict and rule-following. For example, if someone does not take the time to recycle properly, then the community will be worse off. so other members of the community will confront the person about how they recycle. This leads Americans to see Germans as harsh, along with the reasons listed on the last slide. Now, during this project, I had to do a lot of reflecting on how I think about others, and the more I thought about why I judged Germans, the more ridiculous my judgment seemed. My first reason: language and phonetics. This got me thinking about how Russians seemed scary because of their accents, and then somehow my brain jumped to thinking about how people think pit bulls are scary. So many people think pit bulls are scary and dangerous because of how they look and their bark, but pit bulls are generally really nice. I mean, even my own dog is a pit bull, and multiple people have asked who our breeder was because they wanted a dog just like ours. So I decided my first judgment was crazy. Then I thought about World Wars I and II, but I reminded myself that most Germans are deeply ashamed that the wars are part of their history. I wouldn't want someone to hate me because of a mistake my parents made that I had absolutely nothing to do with. Lastly, the media representation of Germans. I think by now we all know that most times the media is wildly inaccurate, and that we should question everything we hear. So why should I trust that the media representation of Germans is any good? And family values. The best way I can describe this German value is by saying that Germans are an extremely lawful good. They want everything to work as smoothly and efficiently as possible, and the best way to do that is by following the rules of society. If someone isn't following the rules, everyone is worse off. So it's justified to be a little rude to get someone to follow the rules. The big thing about this, though, is that it's only a little rude. Typically nothing more than a very forward conversation. In America, though, that rudeness isn't justified, which makes a big difference. Family values vary all over the world, and over time, Americans have come to misinterpret the German family values. And, as usual, this misconception was enhanced by the media. So, like I said before, the reasons why people judge German culture are ridiculous when you think about it. A quick note before I show the video of the waltz. I can't stress enough how progressive the waltz is, which is why it is the perfect dance to use to explain new dancer roles. Originally, the dancers took either the male role or the female role. These roles exclude many different people and partners, such as same-sex dance partners or gender non-binary dancers. That is why the new, correct terms for the roles are leader and follower. This new, progressive language includes all people and partners. The male role is now the leader and the female role is now the follower. Keep in mind that this means a female could now take the role of leader and a male could take the role of follower.